What? Us? Worry? The Trudeau Liberals react to Trump's big win. This is Now You Know. I'm Rob Snow.
Going beyond the headlines.
Now You Know with Rob Snow on News Radio.
Keep calm. Carry on. Nothing to see here. Liberal politicians in Ottawa are trying to sound as though Tuesday's election win by Donald Trump in the United States is really no big deal, and they have the matter well in hand. They've dealt with the Trump administration before, they say, and they're ready to deal with it again. For example, this is Prime Minister Justin Trudeau.
First, I want to congratulate Donald on a decisive victory last night. I look forward to working with President Trump once again to strengthen North American economic opportunities for the middle class, to grow our economies in ways that make us competitive around the world, to protect North America from the many, many challenges that exist around the world. The world is actually even more difficult and more complicated than it was 4 years ago. And I know that there's lots of work for us to do, and I'm looking forward to do it. On our side, we've been preparing for this. We're looking forward to doing this work. And we're going to make sure that this extraordinary friendship and alliance between Canada and the United States continues to be a real benefit to Canadians, but also to people around the world.
But not everyone is as calm and cool as collected as Prime Minister Trudeau. Quebec Premier François Legault is very worried about an influx of asylum seekers into Quebec. This has been an ongoing issue in Quebec, where the Premier was frustrated for years with the situation at Roxham Road. And with Donald Trump promising to deport millions of illegal immigrants from the United States, Premier Legault wants to know what Ottawa is going to do if people start showing up in Quebec.
First, what I want to do is make sure that Mr. Trudeau, the federal government, take this seriously. And I want to follow up every week about the number of new immigrants we get in Quebec. I want to make sure that he protect the borders, the physical borders, that he protect airports, and if need is, I will make sure to have some of our people making sure of that.
That was Premier Legault in Quebec City. Back in Ottawa, the federal immigration minister, Mark Miller, who's been trying to reverse this government's immigration intake, said Canada and the United States see eye to eye on the controlled flow of migrants.
Making sure that we have an immigration system that is disciplined, that is controlled, that has a controlled flow of migrants to this country. That work will continue. Our interests are aligned with the U.S. in making sure that we have a northern border that is secure, and that has a managed flow of trade and migrants, and that'll continue. This will always be an issue of making sure that, for us, what is in the best interest of Canada and what is in the best interests of Canadians.
Immigration is one hot topic. Trade is another. Canada and the United States and Mexico have a free trade deal. It's up for review in 2026. And Donald Trump spent months on the campaign trail promising big tariffs. That's François-Philippe Champagne's file. He's the Minister of Industry. He told everyone to relax. The two sides are already talking.
When I was in Washington, the three things we did are really key now for the Trump administration: security. Everyone is talking about security. That is the paramount topic that when you folks.
We're going to meet our targets in 8 years.
And let me just, so security, supply chain resiliency, they understand that we are their key strategic partner. And then you talk about a growth agenda. That's what the things I was texting with folks this morning, the growth agenda for North America. So on that basis, I would say Canada is better positioned now than we were last time because we are more integrated strategically, and we can see that already in the response that we're seeing from our folks.
Canada has already been under a lot of pressure internationally to spend more money on national defense to hit the NATO target of 2% of GDP. It's thought that pressure is only going to intensify under a Trump administration. Bill Blair is the Minister of National Defense.
There are two commodities that I have to manage as the Minister of National Defense. One is money and one is time. And there is an urgency to the work that we need to do, and that reform is going to be critically important. We also see opportunities to work with our closest allies, including the United States, with foreign military sales and other procurement measures that we believe can be helpful. in order for us to deliver. And we've also been reaching out to other allies. We just recently, for example, last week had a Canada-Korea defense industry conference. I think building those relationships and finding ways to do business better, faster, and more efficiently for everybody is in everyone's interest.
The leader of the official opposition, Pierre Poilievre, the Conservative leader, has also been talking about Donald Trump, questioning what this Liberal government in Ottawa is going to do to make Canada more competitive with the United States, given the threat of tariffs. For example, axe the tax.
I can't think of anyone who would more favor quadrupling the carbon tax to 61 cents a litre in Canada than this Prime Minister. Right. Well, maybe there's one person. Right. I think perhaps President Trump wouldn't mind, because of course it will mean our trucking companies, our factories, our mines will all shut down and go south of the border where they will pay zero carbon tax. Mr. Speaker, we have enough to worry about with President Trump potentially imposing tariffs on Canadian companies. Why would our government impose tariffs on ourselves?
According to the Prime Minister's office, Justin Trudeau spoke with Donald Trump yesterday by telephone. The PMO says the pair discussed trade, supply chains, unfair trading practices in the global economy, North American security, and they agreed to stay in close contact. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know on News Radio.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
Well, he's our friend on the right side of things. Michael Taube is with us, syndicated columnist and speechwriter for former Prime Minister Stephen Harper. Welcome back.
Hey, Rob. How are you doing today?
Oh, everything's fine. Got caught up on the sleep, so we're ready to go again.
Lucky you.
Today. Yeah. Late night the other night, but a big night, of course, and really incredible, actually. So let's get right into it. Why do you think Donald Trump won and Kamala Harris lost?
Well, unsurprisingly, I'm going to be writing about it, so I'll give you more of a short form of what I'm basically going to say and what I've already said. Again, you know, we discussed it, but if you had read my work and had seen various things I had written the last little while, I had endorsed Donald Trump as the better candidate of two imperfect candidates over Kamala Harris, and I basically said it was by a long shot, a country mile. I also said that the Republicans would do much better in the Senate, thought they might capture it, which ultimately they did, and hang on to the House of Representatives, which is just about there and will be pretty shortly. But why Donald Trump won and why Kamala Harris lost is actually very simple. If you just look at Harris as the example, they picked an extremely poor candidate who was not qualified to run. She didn't even run the primaries. Remember, this is a woman who actually was brought in, this is the Vice President of the United States, to replace President Joe Biden when it became clear that he could not finish the race. And quite frankly, from the very start, and this had been determined with Kamala Harris years ago. It had been determined when she tried to run the 2020 Democratic presidential primaries, only ended up with about 1.76% of the vote in total, and was a disaster overall, because they realized that, and this is the case for lots of people in politics, Rob, you can be a good, loyal soldier in politics. You can move up the ladder and do certain things, but not everybody is necessarily qualified to run for the top position, and she just basically proved that she wasn't. Handled herself poorly in interviews, whether it was with Brett Baer at Fox News or even on The View, which would be so safe for most people. You know, ask a simple question of, you know, is there something you would have done differently rather than President Biden over the past 4 years? And she couldn't come up with anything. I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically what she said. And, I mean, you can just go through a laundry list of things, but there was virtually no policy in her campaign, virtually no policy at all. And what little she had, Rob, she couldn't explain in any detail. That is an incredible weakness right there. Even if you're just going to talk in sort of terms that would be qualified as fluff, you have to at least present your case in a way that shows you know the issue, you know how it relates to people, and you know what the end effect will be. She had nothing. So terrible in interviews, terrible, can't think on her feet, never has been able to. This has been a problem with her for years. And she just looked out of her element from day one. And the key really there is that a lot of people on the political left and a lot of senior Democrats protected her and kept saying she was highly qualified, highly competent. She was politically incompetent. One of the worst candidates ever put up by a major party, and certainly the most left-wing ever put up by a major party, which even in today's United States does not sell and will never sell. As for why Donald Trump won, he basically was able to show that the messaging that he had between 2016 and 2020, you know, in terms of the economy, in terms of the way of life, in terms of defending the forgotten man and forgotten woman, in terms of defending the Rust Belt, in terms of turning the economy around, and on foreign policy, where he's shown way above Kamala Harris in every way, shape, or form. He devastated her, and that's why it will be overall his biggest victory in the Electoral College, the first time he's ever won the popular vote in 3 elections, and he becomes only the second U.S. president after Grover Cleveland to serve non-consecutive terms in the White House. It was a resounding victory, no matter what anybody says, and an incredible achievement overall. But again, Trump was the stronger candidate, and more than half of the American population knew this, and Harris was the weaker one. That is as clear as day.
All right. Couple of minutes left here.
Sure.
Before we have to stop. So Biden and Harris are soon going to be gone. I look over on the Democratic side and I just wonder, who do they have that can kind of take over and be the torchbearer for that party? Anyone come to mind for you?
There's not a lot, you know, and I'm not being evasive there. Again, we have to also see how Trump does over the next 4 years before we determine, or at least for the first couple. But there's not a lot of standard bearers. There's not someone who can pick up the torch and run with it immediately. I mean, some people will obviously look towards Gavin Newsom and others who were talked about or bandied about during the time before Kamala Harris was chosen to eventually, you know, it was endorsed by Joe Biden and others, whether they wanted to or were forcibly made to. It doesn't matter how it happened. Gavin Newsom is certainly a possibility now, but really, to be perfectly honest, I think they have to go back to the political center, which this party has left a long, long time ago. That is their only means of success and survival, and they need to find somebody else. And if it means that they have to blow another presidential election to build up something different with different policies, different leaders, different ideas, they won't do it publicly, but privately they'll know they have to do it, much in the same way they sort of knew that Kamala Harris could be the end of the old regime, be it Obama, Clinton, whomever you wish. They have to rebuild this organization. Kamala Harris took it way too far to the left. They need somebody in the center to at least have a chance, or the Republicans are going to dominate the White House for quite some time.
Okay, that's very interesting analysis. So when we come back, we'll put this U.S. election kind of under a Canadian microscope, because there is this idea that it gives newfound life to Justin Trudeau and his political fortunes. I'll ask you about that. When we come back, Michael Taube is with us, syndicated columnist and speechwriter for former Prime Minister Stephen Harper. This is News Radio.
Now you know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
Back with Michael Taube, syndicated columnist and speechwriter for former Prime Minister Stephen Harper. There is this idea out there in the political chattering class, Michael, that this election of Donald Trump on Tuesday night is a glorious opportunity for Justin Trudeau to gain some political momentum. What do you think about that?
I don't think much of it.
I don't buy it either.
It is. We could almost literally end the interview right now. There's really nothing much to say. If people actually think that this is going to help his case, they're out of their minds. And yeah, I know that obviously when you look at Trudeau's mediocre, ineffective leadership and you compare it to Trump coming in, you know, although people have tried to say, well, there's some similarities in the way they kind of look at issues just beyond the ideological periphery, fine. But come on, let's be realistic about it. You know, firstly, Pierre Poilievre, and you and I have talked about this, I've talked about it with others, I've written a bunch of times, and sadly, Rob, I'm probably going to have to go back to this topic again. Pierre Poilievre is not Donald Trump, and Donald Trump is not Pierre Poilievre. Stop trying to create something that does not exist. Pierre Poilievre is a very different political leader and politician. Poilievre looks towards small c conservatism, smaller government, lower taxes, more individual rights and freedoms. He has certainly taken populist ideas that, say, a Donald Trump and others would agree with, whether it be affordable housing or just, affordable housing, the affordability crisis, same word, but I mean, it all fits into the same mantra. So, I mean, that's basically a similarity. There's no doubt that Poilievre and Trump, if Poilievre becomes prime minister next year, which it seems like is going to be the case, will certainly get along better and will be able to figure out things in a much better fashion than Trudeau will do things with Trump. But nobody in their right mind should even propose the idea that Justin Trudeau, who's been behind in double digits by over 2 years to Pierre Poilievre, and more than 10%, since certainly about a year and a quarter now, it has been a complete disaster for Trudeau. Trudeau is not going to be able to rebuild on the back of Donald Trump. There are always going to be politicians who believe that, I'm going to differentiate myself from the way the United States is, and that's going to be my selling point. It's going to be the Canadian style versus the American style. It's not. Nobody buys it anymore. Justin Trudeau is a failed leader. He's been a failed leader for a long period of time, and he's been incredibly lucky to have lasted as long as he has. It's not a big secret. I've said it, others have said it too. And quite frankly, if some of the minority parties would just wake up to reality and realize that the longer that they hold on to this minority government, which is basically just flailing away from a string, it's hurting themselves as well at the same time. They know that Poilievre is going to win. They know that he's going to win big next year. The inevitable should just happen now. And I'm not saying that as a conservative. It's just reality. No, Trudeau is not going to become the great Canadian prime minister and, quote unquote, a political savior because of Donald Trump. No one should even associate the two.
All right. Look, go take a nap. Get caught up on that sleep. Okay. I know you've been burning the candle at both ends. So
I have the past while. This weekend will be very nice. I can honestly say that.
Okay. Yeah. Enjoy some CFL football. I guess it's Go Argos, right? Against the Alouettes. So
they certainly have a chance. They beat them in 2 of 3 games.
Oh, yeah. They look
so, I think so.
They look good. They look good. They look good. They're out for revenge, of course, in that Eastern final in the Canadian Football League. Yeah. Great to hear from you, Michael. Thank you.
Have a good week, Rob.
Yeah. Bye-bye. Michael Taube, syndicated columnist, speechwriter for former Prime Minister Stephen Harper. Our Newsday panel is coming up next. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know, and this is News Radio.
There is no question Rob won't get answered.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues
on News Radio. The Newsday panel.
And the gang is all here. Our Newsday panelists today are Neil Brody, longtime conservative strategist, spent some time in the Harper PMO. How are you today, Neil?
Good, thanks, Rob.
Yeah, great to hear from you. Along with Chris Day, the president of Winston Wilmot. How are you, Chris Day?
Nice to speak with both of you.
Yeah, great to hear from you. So, of course, we mostly want to talk about the U.S. election with a Canadian twist. What should, Neil, the Canadian government be doing now to prepare for a Trump second term?
I'm not sure who the famous person is who said this, but somebody famous once said, countries don't have friends, they have interests. So the Canadian government needs to start making, if they haven't already, start making a list of what those American interests are that the Canadian government can help with. It's handy that this Trudeau government was around for the first term of Mr. Trump's presidency from 2016 to 2020. So they should have a running start. You know, we went through a renegotiation of the NAFTA trade agreement. Presumably, there were other discussions amongst different levels of officials in the two governments. So Canada should have a good idea about this. But Mr. Trump's 30,000-foot campaign this time around was on a strong, safe, and prosperous United States. So taking those themes, I think the government should be trying to figure out how to beef up real military spending. The last time Mr. Trump was around, making a 2% of GDP commitment to military spending. Since that time, NATO has talked about 2% spending on military being the floor, not the ceiling. Mr. Trump's made comments like, the U.S. won't stay a member of NATO if the other NATO countries don't pull their own weight. Canada is a member of the G7, a large economic, we're supposed to have one of the largest economies in the world. The fact that we don't have a military that can, currently they're in Latvia with about 1,500 people serving there. The fact that we can't do another deployment anywhere else in the world while that is happening is an embarrassment. So beefing up real military spending, not just renovating buildings, but buying things and training soldiers. Then we have to figure out what our economic gives are to the United States for trade peace. Mr. Trump's talked about increasing tariffs. We have to decide whether we're going to maintain our tariff stance on things like supply management. And then immigration. Mr. Trump's made a big deal about immigration. We have to make sure that the Canadian border does not come under the watchful eye of Mr. Trump. So we need to clean up our act to make sure that border is secure.
Yeah. The internet says it's Lord Palmerston who said that, by the way. No friends, no enemies, just interest. Lord Palmerston in 1848.
Lord Palmerston.
Yeah, just so you know. Chris probably knew that already. Chris Day from Winston-Wilmot, what should the Canadian government be doing now to prepare for a second Trump term?
Well, foreign relations-wise, the Team Canada approach here is the only approach that they can take, and not just because the president-elect and our prime minister dislike and don't have a ton of respect for one another. And by the way, that's keeping on with the historical lesson here. That's not the first Trudeau prime minister to have really rough relationships with a U.S. president. But all ministers, all premiers, business people from across different economic sectors, the entire diplomatic mission, all of them have to be engaged and rowing in the same direction with respect to discussions now and over the coming months with their American counterparts. And it has to be both charm offensive and fact offensive. Because the facts are on our side that trade liberalization and free trade flowing easily across our borders is the only way that our connected supply chains and our connected, very, very integrated economies are going to thrive as both governments should want. So those are the foreign changes, and there's going to need to be some domestic changes to policy and spending priorities, I'd argue, along the lines of what Neil laid out.
Okay. What do you think about these worries being raised by Premier Legault about deportations from the United States and an influx of asylum seekers into Canada? I mean, is he fear-mongering? Is that a realistic idea that Mr. Legault has? Is that something we should be worried about here in this country, Neil? What do you think?
I don't think so. I don't know the machinery of deporting somebody from the United States. I assume they go back to their home country. I don't know for sure. Right. And I think we still, as far as I understand, we still have the safe, what is it called? The
safe third country agreement, yeah.
Third country agreement. So, if their refugee status or immigration status in the United States fails, I'm not sure that they come to Canada. I think they're returned to the country where they came from. Like I said in my first spot, I think Canada should be more worried about ensuring we are not a feeder of illegal immigrants into the United States.
Into the United States. Okay. Chris, maybe a quick comment on, Mr. Legault, I mean, he's playing this card because he's in a real nationalist fight in Quebec, and immigration is it's not only a hot issue across Canada. It's like hot on steroids in Quebec because of the cultural component. So he has his own motivations for saying something like this, but he is raising the alarm about the threats of deporting millions of illegal immigrants from the United States is going to mean an influx of people into Quebec. How serious a threat is that, do you think?
So I don't think they're going to be deporting people into Quebec or Canada actively. I think
no, but the threat will be there, so they'll flee the United States and show up.
And he does have reason to worry about that, because don't forget the Roxham Road funnel of illegal immigration opened during Trump presidency number 1. Right. So there is a real concern there, and I think both countries have an interest in making sure that doesn't happen again, because frankly, once we get illegal asylum claimants here, it's really difficult to get rid of them because of the rules here. So one of the gives and takes that Neil was referring to earlier may need to be revisions to the Safe Third Country Agreement and an aligned arrangement on what happens to people coming from the U.S. to Canada and from Canada to the U.S.
Okay.
In various circumstances under existing immigration rules.
Okay. We'll talk about next the lessons that this loss by the Democrats can offer for maybe the Liberals or the NDP here in Canada in an election campaign that is going to happen within a year here in this country. When we come back, I'm Rob Snow. It's our Newsday panel on News Radio.
You have questions.
Now you know with Rob Snow has the answers.
On News Radio.
Back with Neil Brody, longtime Conservative strategist, and also with us is Chris Day, president of Winston-Wilmot. So let's talk about campaign lessons to be learned. I'm sure the Democrats will, they'll do the autopsy on what happened to them. I would like to know, given their defeat, what lessons can be learned by the struggling Liberals and New Democrats. What do you think, Neil?
Well, I'm going to be unkind to the NDP, and I'm going to say that the lesson they should learn is leadership matters. The Democrats saw that Joe Biden was floundering and was probably not the best leader for them, and they got rid of Mr. Biden expeditiously when they finally decided that. Mr. Singh has done, I'm trying not to be unkind, but he's done nothing for the federal NDP party, and the longer they keep him around as leader, the less and less he'll do, and I'll just leave it at that for the NDP. As for the Liberals, you and I have talked about this before, that my wife is the smart one in the household, and I always have to ask her the guy's name who has the hierarchy of needs, and she always reminds me it's Maslow. And, on that basic level of needs, people need food and shelter, and then after they get food and shelter, they need safety and security. And the Liberals, propped up by the NDP, allowed the cost of food and shelter to run wild for 3 years. So back to basics. The government needs to go back to basics and start providing basic functions of government to Canadians. Don't get sidetracked by, the green llama farming fund or whatever it happens to be. People don't care about that. People want to feel safe and secure in their household. They want to know if they work hard, they can save some money and buy a new car or buy their kids a new PlayStation or whatever it happens to be. Get back to basics. The second thing is,
or a sustainably farmed llama, perhaps.
It's a pretty niche. It's a pretty niche thing there, Rob. The second thing is stop insulting Canadians. In 2014, before Mr. Trudeau became Prime Minister, he talked about, conservatives are your neighbors, they're not your enemies. We all have to agree, whether you're conservative or liberal, that negativity can't be this country's lifeblood. And then once he became Prime Minister, he started calling conservatives Nazis, women haters, haters of science. And we saw that transpire in the United States for many years. People called Mr. Trump all sorts of things, the end of democracy as we know it. I don't think that helped the Democrats over the course of the Donald Trump years. I don't think that helped them as a political party get ahead. And so those are two things I think the Liberals can take away from this. Provide basics to the Canadians before you start worrying about other things, and stop insulting, whatever it is, 30% of Canadians who vote Conservative in every election.
Okay. Chris?
So I'm going to go on the record as being pro-llama first.
That's good.
Oh, no, I'm going to get all the anti-llama hate me.
Anti-llama coming your way, my friend.
No.
I mean, listen, there's no sugarcoating the fact that Kamala Harris and the Democrats, up and down the ticket all across the country, had a really terrible night on Tuesday. They lost the Senate, they lost the House, and in no county did Kamala Harris outperform Joe Biden. And that's not how you win elections, quite obviously. She didn't speak directly to people, nor did she speak clearly to people about what she wanted to do. She didn't focus on people's number one needs, which Neil laid out very effectively. She focused on wedge issues, and she focused on identity politics, and she focused on not being Donald Trump. And it didn't work. So what the Liberals need to take from this is that they have to go back to their ad agency and recut the ads that they just put out last week, which were mimicking, like down to the word,
We're not going back. We're not going back. Yeah,
exactly. Messaging, and they need to focus perhaps less on llama farming and more on the actual pocketbook and day-to-day priorities of Canadians. And they have been horribly out of touch on those items, and that has been reflected in the polling. The NDP, their response to Donald Trump's election the other day was absolutely atrocious and disqualifying for any national party that aims to form government someday. It was profoundly unserious, and frankly, I think they've taken themselves out of contention with both that and the hosting of the UNRWA apologist in Ottawa this week. It's just been a terrible, terrible week for the NDP, and I think both parties are going to be left scrambling, and both should be hurt in the polls by virtue of this.
All right, we'll be right back. One more quick look at the Canadian context of the U.S. election with our panelists. It's our Newsday panel here. I'm Rob Snow. This is News Radio.
No question goes unasked or unanswered.
Now You Know with Rob Snow returns on News Radio.
With Neil Brody and Chris Day. Neil, what do you think of the idea that this election of Donald Trump is good for Trudeau?
Listen, I don't know that Mr. Trudeau gets a lasting boost in the polls out of this, but he may get some bump. What it does mean is it makes it easier for Mr. Trudeau to campaign. And again, I'm not sure that he'll win, but it makes it easier for him to campaign because now he can campaign not only against Mr. Poilievre and the federal Conservatives, but all the Conservative premiers like Doug Ford and Daniel Smith, and he can campaign against Donald Trump. And not just Donald Trump, but also Donald Trump's quote unquote contemporaries, the Elon Musks and the what's his name, Robert Kennedys of the world.
Yeah.
If Elon Musk says something crazy, which he does from time to time, Mr. Trudeau can pick up on that crazy idea and attribute it to Mr. Poilievre. So it makes it easier for Mr. Trudeau rhetorically to campaign against Conservatives, but I don't think he sees any lasting bump out of this. The Liberal brand is so tarnished in Canada. I don't see how he saves it.
What do you think, Chris?
I typically agree. I think that he'll get perhaps a temporary bump for being normal, or relatively so. But I think attempts to make Pierre Poilievre the new Donald Trump have failed to date, and they will fail now that once Mr. Trump is back in office. And relationships matter more in the Canada-U.S. context. Like there's sort of the number one job of a Canadian Prime Minister is to maintain a decent relationship with the U.S. President. So I think people will be looking to Mr. Trudeau to not score points off Donald Trump, but to actually make deals happen and keep our economy rolling. So we'll see how. I think people will judge him on that more so than his ability to be clever and try to link Pierre Poilievre and his Conservatives with Robert Kennedy Jr. and
Right.
Team Trump. I would just note that Angus Reid had a poll out on this very question not too long ago, and Canadians are viewing Pierre Poilievre as being much, much more able to deal with Donald Trump than Justin Trudeau, perhaps for all the reasons that Neil mentioned. But I don't think that this is going to help Mr. Trudeau. It actually just complicates his already very complicated job.
Okay, maybe just one quick comment from you, Chris, just because you have experience in this. Eventually, it could be Pierre Poilievre who would have to deal with a Trump administration as prime minister. He would need people with experience in say, the Canada-U.S. relationship and foreign affairs. He does have people around him, like John Baird, the former foreign affairs minister in the Harper years. How valuable could someone like that be for Pierre Poilievre at a time like this?
It'll be valuable for Pierre Poilievre. It'll be valuable for Canada to have experienced people like John Baird and all of the previous Conservative and Liberal cabinet ministers who've got great relationships to leverage down in the U.S.
Okay. Hey, thank you so much. Lots to talk about this week. Great to hear from you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Have a good day, Chris.
Okay. Bye-bye. All right. Neil Brody spent some time in the Harper PMO. He's a longtime Conservative strategist. Chris Day worked for John Baird when John Baird was foreign minister, and he's the president of Winston Wilmot in Ottawa. I'm Rob Snow. Talk Back is coming up right after the news. 2 hours of debate, discussion, and your calls. This is News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Welcome to Talk Back. 2 hours of debate and discussion on the big issues of the day, and it is hard to escape the news about the U.S. election and Trump's big win on Tuesday night, Wednesday morning. So that is one of our topics for today. But if you're Trumped out, first of all, I don't blame you. And second, we have some other topics that we wouldn't mind throwing out there just for a change of pace, just for a change in the conversation, to change the channel a little bit, if talking about Donald Trump and U.S. politics is not your thing. But first, it is still the biggest story in the world. It is by far the most important story in the world, and it demands Canada's attention, that's for sure. So we want to ask you today about this big Trump comeback. And this is what we want to ask you. What do you think Canada should do to prepare for Trump's second term as president of the United States? What should be happening here? What should our government be doing in order to get ready for whatever Trump is planning to do? Because from where we stand, there are all sorts of things to think about in the Canadian context with this Trump victory. There's immigration, there's the carbon tax, there's this proposed emissions cap on our oil and gas sector, there's spending on national defense, there's supply management and agriculture, protection for dairy and egg and poultry farmers. The government has to be thinking about all of this now as it prepares for Trump to take office early next year. So we'd love to hear from you on that. What should Canada be doing to get ready for Donald Trump, the sequel? 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. Now, if you don't want to talk about Trump and the U.S. election, because we've been talking about it for days, what it means for Canada, all of that stuff, that's fine. That's fine. And, we can gradually move on to other things. We have a couple of other topics that we want to present to you today, and we'll see if there are any takers on either of these topics. For example, what do you think about this? If you're under the age of 16, you're not allowed to use social media anymore. What do you think about that? If you're under the age of 16, banned from social media use. What do you think? They're going to try and do that in Australia. The Australian government is going to pass a law that would ban young people under the age of 16 from using social media. Think about that. No Facebook. Your 15-year-old, no Facebook. No TikTok, no Instagram, no Twitter, none of it. They wouldn't be allowed to access those platforms because the Australian government says the platforms are harmful to younger people. You think that's a good idea? Is it a workable idea? Banning social media access until people reach the age of 16. Good idea? I wonder if it's possible. Or do you think teenagers would find a way around it? Maybe social media companies would help them find a way around it. I'm sure they'd be happy to help teenagers find a way to get around a law like that. I ask that because if you can't enforce a law, what good is a law? Gosh, I'd love to know what you think about that, especially parents of teenagers. Do you think that's a good idea? Is it workable? Do you think the Canadian government should consider looking into doing the same thing? 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. If you're under the age of 16, you wouldn't be allowed to use social media, at least in Australia. And here's another topic for you. This is a hot one. Should there be limits on where people can protest? Should there be limits on where people can protest? We bring this up because there's a big push on in Ontario, at least at the municipal level, to put limits on where people can hold protests. There's been terrible violence in Brampton between Hindus and Khalistanis. There was a protest at a Hindu temple, turned violent. People were assaulted. We've seen the pro-Hamas crowd protest near synagogues, in heavily populated Jewish neighborhoods, outside of Jewish-owned businesses, even outside Jewish care homes. In Ontario, there is already a law on the books that limits where people can protest near abortion clinics. So these laws do exist. Our question for you is, should they exist? What do you think? You have a right to protest. Peacefully. Being the key word, peacefully. It is guaranteed. It is a fundamental right in Canada to be able to protest. It's guaranteed in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, Section 2C. So when any government of any stripe at any level looks to limit a fundamental freedom in Canada, well, you should take a good hard look at that. You should take a good hard look at that. So if you want to do that today, I'm all for doing that today. There's a lot of material to keep us busy for the next couple of hours. So join us in the conversation and we can talk about these issues. The number to call is 1-833-668-2577. If you've never called us before, just mention that to our call screener and we'll make your call a priority. 1-833-668-2577. What should Canada be doing to get ready for a second term of U.S. President Donald Trump? What do you think about the idea of banning young people from using social media until they turn 16? Is that something you would support? Do you think it's possible to do that? And should there be limits on where people can protest, where protests can be held? Should protests be banned from happening in certain places, like outside places of worship, or outside of hospitals, or long-term care homes, or abortion clinics, or schools? What would you think about that? 1-833-668-2577. Your call's coming up. I'm Rob Snow. It's Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
There's a lot to talk about today. What should Canada be doing to get ready for a second term of U.S. President Donald Trump? What do you think about the idea of banning young people from using social media until they turn 16 years old? And should there be limits on where people can hold protests? We're going to start in Kitchener today. Peter is a first-time caller calling from Kitchener. Hi, Peter.
Hi, Rob. How are you?
I'm good, Peter. Thank you.
So I think the first thing we need to establish is that we're not trying to limit the ability of people to protest. We're trying to say if you can't protest peacefully, then we're going to have to cut it back. It's like, remember, the charter guarantees your right to protest peacefully, not to protest and cause violence, right?
Sure.
So I mean, if people can't use common sense and abide by the law, which is the right to protest peacefully, then we have to start passing laws that protect others from the violent acts. I mean, I'm not sure why anyone would be too upset by that. There's lots of laws that we pass to protect people from other people's, I'll say, lack of discretion or bad judgment when it comes to causing other people harm, and that's where we have to make sure that everyone is protected, and not just the people who feel like causing harm or causing violence.
Yeah, I guess I would suggest, Peter, that if those laws exist, why don't we enforce those laws? I think the reason
that's the thing.
Okay. I think
the
the reason
I mean,
these laws are being considered, just let me finish, just my own opinion, because I think they're being considered because governments and law enforcement have allowed protests to get out of hand. And when protesters are committing criminal acts, they're not protesters anymore.
Exactly.
But we have law enforcement that refuses to crack down. I think this is a law enforcement issue or a political issue.
It could very well be. And so let me give you an example of this. Is sort of an analogy, but take for example fireworks. People buy fireworks. They legitimately set them off when they're supposed to on days they're allowed to. Between 9 and 11 p.m., Canada Day, whatever, Diwali, you name it. Like the holidays that are designated for fireworks. The problem is now every Joe Blow goes and buys fireworks and sets them off at 3 o'clock in the morning or 4 o'clock in the morning on days that aren't holidays. They light them off in parks, fire them at other people. Again, a law enforcement issue. You're not allowed to do that. But the problem is that if we can't stop people from doing it, then maybe the law should basically be passed that nobody without a license to use fireworks should be allowed to buy fireworks. And if that's the simplest way to bring safety to the general community from the goofballs that decide to go out there and either willingly cause people harm or through their own indiscretion or ignorance cause people harm, then we have to go further with the law and maybe prohibit people from buying fireworks. So the same idea with the protesting. If the police can't enforce the laws properly when it comes to protests without the police receiving backlash from other communities within the greater community, then maybe we just need to make it so that the protests can't happen in the first place. And I'm talking unlawful protests or protests that are taken too far.
All right. You made your point, Peter. Thank you for your call. Great to hear from you. First-time caller from Kitchener there. Let's go to Rick in Dartmouth wants to talk about Donald Trump. Hi there, Rick. Hi.
How you doing? Look,
good.
I called yesterday. Wanted to get in on the fun. A couple of things that I'd like to mention. Local host here, Todd Bino, has often said that he believes that there are lots of people who support Trump would never mention it because they know it's going to bring vitriol from other people.
I totally believe that. Yeah.
Okay, that's one thing. The media never seem to, and I don't mean you, but media never really seem to talk about that. The polls and all that are very similar to what happened in 2016 when Donald Trump came from nowhere and won. And I don't think there's going to be a giant, how should I say it, upswing in any of the bad things that the Democrats were talking about. I don't think it's going to end democracy. I don't think any of that stuff. And that was pure hyperbole, and it obviously didn't work. Now, one of the things I did say when I did call earlier in the week on Monday was that I hoped that the election was a solid victory by, I think I said landslide, but I mean, Trump had a landslide in my view. So I just hoped that there was a solid victory for either one of the parties so that there was no contesting the election at all.
Sure.
And the fact that the Democrat vote dropped from well over, I think it was 82,000 to 67,000 million. Sorry, from 82 to 67 million in the popular vote. I would think would suggest that their message fell on deaf ears. So
well, anyway. It was certainly it was a decisive victory for Donald Trump. Rick, thank you. Thank you. Again, I'm asking, good to hear from you. I'm asking a very specific question today just to remind the listeners, what should this country be doing? There's a lot to do in this country with Donald Trump set to become the president in January. Wade in Silver Lake. Wade. Hi there, Wade.
Rob, I think the
Yes.
first thing that Canada should do to prepare is call an election immediately and get rid of tyrant Trudeau.
Okay.
And
all right.
I wanted to talk about the cell phone thing.
Social media ban. Yeah.
The social media ban. Yeah, I've been working on this for over a year now, and what I came up with as far as making it visible was giving kids an old-style flip phone. That way there would be a visual for law enforcement and enforcement of any kind, for that matter. I joined Smartphone Free Childhood out of the UK a year ago, and I just got an email from them on October 17th, and they are introducing, or on October 17th at noon, there was a bill to be introduced in the House of Commons by the new Labour MP, Josh McAllister, OBE, and the bill is called the Safer Phones Bill.
Okay,
and
that's interesting.
I haven't done any more research on that. But as far as getting kids off social media, man, I tell you that it is the biggest, in my opinion, it is the biggest propaganda brainwashing machine known to mankind. The only other issue I would have is giving the kids a major distraction when they're just learning how to drive. I don't think that would be a wise decision, so I'd say 18.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Wade, got to run. Yeah, great to have comments on all three of our topics. Restricting political protests, where political protests can be held. Australia is going to introduce a law that would ban young people from accessing social media until they hit the age of 16 years old. And of course, Trump, the election, the U.S. election, is still the biggest story in the world. What should Canada be doing to get ready for Trump Part 2? This is Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
What should Canada be doing to get ready for a second term of U.S. President Donald Trump? What do you think about the idea of banning young people from social media until they turn 16? And should there be limits on where people can protest, like outside places of worship or hospitals or care homes, abortion clinics? What do you think? Peter calling from Halifax. Hi, Peter.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good, Peter. How are you?
Good.
Thank you.
Quite good, thanks. But, I've been listening to our CBC. Sorry for that, but
that's okay.
And what I would do if I was Canadian,
yes,
trade negotiator or representative of Canada, I would make a tape of the CBC, our state media, calling Donald Trump a misogynistic, rapist, criminal, incompetent, unfit for office, mentally, incompetent, everything that is nonstop, even now after he was elected. Mm-hmm. And then I would take that tape and I would give it to a trade representative or an ambassador or something who worships the ground that Donald Trump walks on. And right. I would say, here, this is what our self-appointed elite think of your president. So why don't you listen to that, and then we'll start our negotiations.
Right. Okay.
They are suicidal, these people.
Suicidal.
They have
Well, but I will say, people, in the run-up to the election, we did a lot of Trump shows, and a lot of people called me and expressed those exact same sentiments. They don't like the man.
Suicidal. Thank you.
They think he's a deeply, deeply flawed individual.
Well, it never stops with this with our CBC. They've called him the most heinous, disgusting things, and they're still doing it after more than half of the voting population put him into power.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Thank you. That's our time for the first half hour. Look, if you're on the line, stay on the line because I really want to hear your opinions on these issues, especially on social media and restricting protests and where protests can be. I think that's a very important issue. We should really have a discussion about that at some length. And Trump, of course, we can always talk about Trump if you want. 1-833-668-2577. It's News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talk Back on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
We're still talking about the U.S. presidential election. What should Canada be doing to get ready for President Trump Part 2? What do you think of the idea about banning young people from using social media until the age of 16? And should there be limits on where people can protest, like outside places of worship? Just as one example. Let's go to Quinn in Halifax. Hi, Quinn.
Hey there. Hope you guys can hear me.
Yeah, I hear you just fine. Thank you.
Fantastic. Yeah, I was hoping to talk about protests, especially at places of worship or healthcare facilities. I think it's a very sensitive topic, especially when we're talking about places of worship, considering how many religions have been persecuted and have faced a lot of hate, especially since the upcoming election. That said, there has been a lot of, or some religious institutes that have made themselves political actors. I know of some that have invited real estate agents or real estate facilities to come in and sell illegal residence in occupied lands, which is a violation of international law. And it's stuff like that that makes me have to take a pause my own emotions of protecting these religious institutes, of how they're being manufactured by political agents and becoming places of political protest because of that.
Okay. The jumping off point for the push for limits on where people can have protests seems to be, well, we have the anti-Israel protests in the wake of October 7th. Okay. So there's that. And then you have this terrible situation in Brampton, where there was violence and people were hitting other people with sticks and everything. To me, that's just not legitimate protest.
No, entirely. Right? Especially what happened in Brampton. That's part of the concern, is how to differentiate those legitimate type or illegitimate type of protests versus legitimate protests that are in response to those political agents.
Yeah, sure. But if you're hitting people with sticks, I mean, you're not protesting. You're committing a violent act. Right. So whether that's happening outside of in this case, a Hindu temple, or whether it's happening at a hockey arena or shopping mall or whatever, the matter is not political protest. The matter is violent assault. And I think the police should become involved. I think this, again, I come back to this with the original caller. I get the intent. I'm not saying, the intent is wrong. I just think it's misplaced, I think. What's needed is law enforcement. What's needed is law enforcement. What's needed is government and law enforcement to enforce the laws that we have. We don't need new laws.
I completely agree with that, especially as you said yourself, violence is not political protest. So I don't think we should entertaining misinterpreting the two, especially with what happened in Brampton. That wasn't a protest, that was a violent act.
Yeah.
And that's been a huge issue. Even the discussion of protest is describing it all as protest.
Yeah. We have laws against hate speech. We have laws against assault. But now we have municipal governments that want new laws, and I don't see the need for new laws. I thank you, Quinn. Your phone is just cracking up there, so I'm going to move along. On the social media issue, banning people from social media, young people, until they turn 16. In Calgary, Jody on that one. Jody, hi there.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. Jody, what do you think of that idea?
I think it's BS, to be honest. I think the parents. It's up to the parents to decide whether their children or teenagers should be on social media. I don't think the government should have any hand in that whatsoever. That's like that to me. That's a freedom of expression, just speech, or sort of the same idea. So I think that's just totally wrong. Australia is starting to get really like almost like to the point where they're making too many laws, the government themselves.
Okay.
And I also think that, not trying to change the subject, but my father lives in North Carolina. He's an Air Force veteran, and he actually predicted a landslide for Donald Trump. And he said the reason why we heard from a lot of people was because of the mass immigration situation.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And I think that Canada's going to be in trouble with when that happens, because a lot of the illegal immigrants are going to be coming for the northern border, and with the government we have here with Justin Trudeau and Mark Miller, it's going to be bad, because those guys are total, excuse my language, they're total idiots.
Okay,
and
that's fine. I'm sure they've been called worse. They've been called worse on this show. One of the previous caller called them a tyrant, for crying out loud. Called the Prime Minister a tyrant. But
that's over the top there. So
okay. First of all, I'm not saying I disagree with you, and it's certainly being raised as a concern by the Premier of Quebec, who I said has his own motivations because he's in a real nationalist fight there in Quebec. But also, Jason Kenney raised this prospect in an interview at the National Post just a few weeks ago, like 2 weeks ago, that it's something to watch. If Trump wins the election, there will be an influx of asylum claims into Canada.
I agree with that.
It is something. Time. Yeah, I think you're onto something there, Jody. Thank you for your call.
Yeah.
You too. We're going to stop here. Emran, you hang on the line. We'll get to your call next, but we do have to stop here. I'm Rob Snow. It's Talk Back on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talk Back on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Getting ready for a second term of U.S. President Donald Trump. What should Canada be doing? What do you think of the idea of banning young people from using social media until the age of 16? Should there be limits on where people can protest? 1-833-668-2577. Emran, thanks for calling again. Go ahead.
Hey, Rob, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
I support this idea of children being 16, under 16, and not allowed to be used the social media. I feel that although I feel that the Australian model will going to really reveal things, whether it's workable, practical or not. If that's the case, then I think it should be used or enforced here as well in Canada.
Okay, and why do you think that, Emran?
I feel that, 16 and under, the child is not that matured. I'm a parent too, my kids are all grown up, but I've seen them when they were that ages, they used to do a lot of things around, and, it's you make mistakes, at that age. It's not very mature. Yes. Maturity is not there. So you have to be at least 16 or over. You have a little bit more maturity, so you can make the right judgmental decisions.
Yes. And if you're a young person and you make one mistake on social media, it can really cost you, in terms of bullying. We've heard terrible stories about sextortion and things like this, Emran. One wrong move.
Sextortion is something which is my main concern, because I feel that
right.
You are under 16, don't have that kind of, like I said, judgmental selection. So you might make a mistake, and that can carve you or scarve you for the rest of your life. And I feel that there should be some restrictions on that. If this thing works in Australia, I think then we will have something to really, work with. Otherwise, if you can get around. Kids are pretty smart these days. They will go to find ways to get around this, So let's see how it works in Australia.
All right. Emran, thank you for your call. Great to hear from you again. Rudy in Cambridge is up next on Talkback. Hi there, Rudy.
Hey, Hey, how you doing? Finally got your phone number. I had listened a lot of times. Anyway, social media under 16. I think it's a little off, Okay, now you're 16. You can go on to social media, and here's your keys to the car. Because you can drive now, too.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a little off. Yeah, I know I'm older, and things were a little different back then, but, it's up to the parents. Parents got to start teaching people. I mean, we can't coddle these kids until they're 19. I know when I turned 18, the drinking age was 18. But, 16, that's a little much.
A little much. Okay. But we know that social media is bad, right?
Well, yeah, it can be. Like anything, you have to use it responsibly. And that's partially up to the parents.
I know, but can a 14 or 15-year-old, formulate how to use social media responsibly, I guess? We know that it has a terrible impact on on the mental health of young people. Bullying, body image problems, anxiety, depression, it's all made worse because of social media use. And we limit what young people get. You say, you can't drive until you're 16. It's not like you can go buy a pack of smokes or a 6-pack of beer or a Mickey of vodka, right? So should we look at social media the same way as a product that causes the same kind of harm, and we want to keep young people away from it? What do you think?
I think with all they coddle the children too much.
Coddled, okay.
Kids have to experience things. When I was 17, I was working for the Department of Natural Resources out in the bush.
Yeah.
It's only 1 year more, but it was an experience real quick. When you're and doing stuff like that. I was training to be a forest firefighter at that age, too, through the government.
All right. So you think it's kind of nanny, too much like a nanny state kind of thing, right? You think it's too much nanny state? Nanny state. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, Rudy, thank you. I want to take one more here before we have to stop. Melissa in Calgary. Hi, Melissa.
Hi there. I just want to say I'm in Calgary. One of the best things that the Danielle Smith government has done is ban cell phone use in the schools. Yeah. We know I have a 13-year-old, 11-year-old, and a 6-year-old, and it has helped so much. And if there was a way to limit social media, I don't coddle my children, but if they aren't allowed to use social media, they're not in the social group. That's how they communicate. So it's a very tough thing, super tough, as a parent to monitor and let your kids connect with others, but not let them be on social media.
Okay,
right?
So you don't let your children use social media.
No, I do. So the 13-year-old has Snapchat, and you have to be 13 to have an account. So even if that was enforced, even if 13 was enforced, that would be great. But that's not what's happening. 10-year-olds use their parents set them up with their email, their age, to allow them to have accounts. So my 11-year-old does not have Snapchat, does not have social media. The 13-year-old does. But all it does is feed him ads. All it does is feed him videos, and it's horrible. Like, I hate it. But it's also the only way that kids communicate. So that's how they call each other. That's how they text each other, is all through Snapchat. So, I try to just text them, just FaceTime them, but that's not how kids work. So what I'm saying, if it was like an all across the board thing, it would be easier for all of the kids to follow and all of the parents to follow.
Okay.
Just
all right.
No
Thank
cell
you.
phones in Calgary. Yeah. Thank you.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate the call. We'll stop again. Talk back. I'm Rob Snow. We have any number of issues out there. The U.S. election, people are still interested in talking about that. Banning young people from using social media until the age of 16. The Australian government has introduced legislation to do just that. What about limits on where people can protest? Limiting protests to certain places like places of worship, hospitals, long-term care homes, abortion clinics. What do you think about that? Bubble zones, they call them. Love your thoughts. Give us a call. Let's talk back on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talk Back on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Lots of topics there to pick from. Still, we're talking about the U.S. election. We're talking about the social media use. We're talking about protest, all kinds of stuff today. Carl in Nova Scotia. Hi there, Carl.
Oh, hey there. How's it going? I'm a first-time caller.
Well, I appreciate that, Carl. And now, where are you calling from in Nova Scotia?
Just Halifax, let's say.
Okay, let's say that. Okay, all right.
All right.
You want to talk about the U.S. election, right? Yeah.
I was going to talk about the election, but this social media thing kind of actually struck a chord with me a little bit. Just a little bit of a preface. I was growing up at the time when social media started becoming a thing. All right. Yeah. I'm in my 30s.
Okay.
And geez, at the time, it was just an explosion, right? Like out of nowhere, dial-up becomes high-speed internet, and you're suddenly capable of doing things that nobody thought possible a decade ago. And yeah, there probably should be some regulations because it just from a first-hand experience, it does mess with you. Like, there's
I believe so.
Yeah, there's things that you can do with a cell phone that, like, nobody who's 12 or 13 or 14 should be able to do. But then, like, I could tell some horror stories.
Yeah, I'm glad social media and cell phones weren't around when I was that age. I'll tell you that right now. Let me ask you this. Let's say, because the Australian government is going to try and do this.
Right.
And this is how they're going to do it. All Australians would have to provide personal information such as ID or an image of their face in order to verify their identity in order to have an account, a social media account on one of these platforms. That's how they're going to do it. Okay. What I want to know is would it work? Or do you think even 13, 14, would they still be able to access it? Like the previous caller said, Snapchat, you're supposed to be 13, but she knows 10-year-olds who are on Snapchat, for example. They just find a way around it,
Yeah, they probably could, but Snapchat, I got to tell you, is one of the worst. Like, it's literally like, people who have Snapchat know what they're using it for. And for the most time, it's not usually good things. And I know it's like Snapchat's a little newer, so I never grew up with that one. But generally, like things disappear after 24 hours, can't be traced. That those things are there for a reason, and they're not good ones.
I see.
And it's like. But as far as like the facial recognition and the info and stuff, I'm a little iffy about the way that they plan on doing it, because like I don't know, I'm a little bit I'm hesitant when it comes to like the facial recognition and stuff, because that gets logged somewhere. I don't know. People call me a part-time conspiracy theorist, but
okay, all right.
But what I'm
all right. They're playing the music, so we have to go. But that, that's interesting. So you think there should be some form of regulation? Okay, interesting. Thank you.
I'd actually be more for limits on cell phones. Like you shouldn't have
limits
a
on
cell phone before a certain age, because I think that's they're just so accessible.
Okay, thank you. We're back after the news with another full hour of your calls. We talk the big issues of the day.
It's time to talk back
on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now
and have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Hour number 2. We're still gathering your thoughts on the outcome of the U.S. presidential election, the victory of Donald Trump. What should Canada be doing to get ready for that? Should there be limits on where people can protest? Should protests be banned from happening in certain places, like outside of places of worship, for example? And what do you think about the idea of banning young people from using social media until they turn 16 years old. Is that something you would support? Do you think it's even possible to do that? They're going to try and do that in Australia. They've introduced legislation there, could come into effect next year. And nobody under the age of 16 would be allowed to access social media. What do you think about that? Government there says it's doing it because it says, and I happen to believe this, by the way, social media has a terrible impact on young people, especially with their mental health. And I don't actually think it's just young people that are harmed by social media. I think social media is just a scourge. But we're grown-ups. We can make our own decisions. This is about protecting young people, according to the Australian government, from the harms of social media. Is it a good idea? Do you think it'll work? I think that's an important question. This is a news report. It outlines it pretty well. This is from ABC News in Australia. That's the public broadcaster in Australia. So let's listen to the report because it outlines how this would work. Go ahead, Dave.
Australia is plenty of young people love social media, and social media loves them back. It's a relationship the Prime Minister wants to break up.
And this one's for the mums and dads. Social media is doing harm to our kids, and I'm calling time on it.
Apps like TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, X and YouTube are set to be banned for people under 16 years old.
The onus will be on social media platforms to demonstrate they are taking reasonable steps to prevent access. The onus won't be on parents or young people.
We would like to see not only the legislation introduced this year, we would like to see the legislation pass the Parliament this year.
The platforms are already pushing back. Facebook and Instagram's parent company warning, what's missing is a deeper discussion on how we implement protections. While tech industry body Digi says, to enforce a blunt ban, all Australians would have to provide their personal information, such as an ID or an image of their face, to verify their age.
We're not really hearing those granular details yet from the Albanese government about how this is going to work.
Among young people who've grown up with social media, views are mixed.
I don't know if it should be banned, but I think there should be more restrictions.
I don't think all social media is bad. I just think it should be very heavily limited.
It's just really easy to bully people on social media.
A ban is both blunt and imperfect. There's little doubt some young people will find a way around it. But the government argues it will, at the very least, empower anxious parents to say no to teenagers, insisting all their friends are online. Tom Lowry, ABC News, Canberra.
Okay, so thanks to ABC News for the use of that. I think it's a very interesting issue. So let's jump right back into that one with Lisa in Elmira. What do you think, Lisa?
Hi.
Hi.
I agree. It's very complicated. Like, how do you control it? And even like the one caller who said, well, maybe rather than banning social media, maybe limiting cell phones. But then you've got kids who are in kindergarten with Apple Watches. And then
Sure.
Where do you go from banning it? Like I heard mention of YouTube, but you're looking at any platform that anyone can make a comment on really is a form of social media. So there's so many areas that you would be looking at to ban. And I have to say, I have two teenagers. And during COVID, my daughter had just started grade 9. And I feel like without this one form of social media, it was called Google Hangouts, I think it really helped her. She still got to stay connected with her friends. And at that time also, as parents, they had to be in the room with us to use social media. And that involved conversations like, don't even think about saying something on social media or in a comment that you're not willing to say to somebody's face.
Good
and
advice.
having those conversations right in the moment when they see things on social media as well, or hear other people talking.
Okay, so you question the feasibility of even doing this, right?
Well, for sure. Like I know,
Yeah.
Like some kids have their own iPads and some kids don't. Some kids have
Right.
an iWatch. Sorry, not an iWatch, whatever, an Apple phone, whatever you call them. And then I may put I have parental controls on my children's stuff, but then my daughter went for a sleepover, and at the age of 8, her friend, who was also 8, pulled up her iPad and showed her some pornographic videos.
Wow.
So do you never let them out of the house because you don't, right? Like what she saw, she never should have seen. And if I would have known that was going to happen, but I don't have a crystal ball to tell the future.
Right. So you hear in the news report there, it's called a blunt instrument. It's blunt, maybe too blunt.
To ban it?
Yeah.
I guess it is, because realistically, like, I'm 54. I could pick up my phone and talk on my phone, on my home phone, when I was younger to talk to my friends. Then these kids, they don't really have that option anymore. Who has a home phone anymore?
Right.
And
okay.
So, there's that.
That if they can't be on social media, they won't be able to socialize. I've heard that today.
Yeah.
And you seem to.
That's all they know.
That's all they know.
That's all they know.
Okay.
Like the one caller talked about Snapchat, and I agree. These messages that just disappear and can't be found. That can be a real problem. Absolutely. But if you're making, we've got so many issues with kids and mental health, and especially since COVID, if you're taking away all their ways to actually connect, I don't think that's going to make it better.
Right. Be careful what you wish for, maybe, then. Okay.
Yeah,
thank you. All right.
You're
Lisa,
welcome.
very interesting comments. Thank you. Yeah, really insightful there. 1-833-668-2577. It's hour number 2 of Talkback. I'm Rob Snow. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
We're talking about the outcome of the U.S. presidential election, banning young people from social media, limiting protests. Let's go to, is it Dina or Dinah in Cambridge?
It's Dina from Cambridge.
Dina.
Can you hear me?
Thank you. Yeah, I hear you just fine, Dina. Yeah.
Oh, there's been lots of good commentary so far, so I might be repeating something someone else said. Just quickly, how am I as a Canadian going to handle the election results? I'm boycotting the United States for 4 years, so that's how I'll handle that.
All right, okay.
I wanted to call in to talk about more the social media aspect with our youth.
Sure.
So I think, unfortunately, we let social media get out of hand, and now we're sort of in the position where we have to swim backwards or in reverse to catch up to the ills that we put forth with social media running wild. My suggestion is that we put more onus on social media to have different types of accounts. And I think that sort of along the lines what Snapchat did is that parents should sign up for their children's accounts, and those accounts should have time limits on them. And I don't think that they should be able to access social media during school hours and after their bedtime.
Oh, okay.
I think that would do a lot to create a balance, because I understand how a lot of people find social media important. I am not one of those people. I feel Facebook is the devil incarnate. I am not on social media. But I see the addiction that has happened, and it is an addiction for a lot of people.
I think so.
But we can't just take it away, because we know that's not going to solve anything. I think if we have time limits for our youth at appropriate times that they can have access to social media, because they're signing up for an account based on their age. And then as they progress, then they can have more liberties on social media.
More freedom, yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because what a lot of people don't realize is that these social media companies are paying people to write algorithms to draw you into the rabbit hole.
Oh, sure.
That's why people spend hours and hours on them. And we need to have a combination of laws, requirements for these social media companies, and time limits. And I think that would help to restore a balance and give everybody a little bit of what is needed for our mental health, because it is affecting all mental health, but our most vulnerable are our youth.
Yeah, very good. Very well said, Dina. Thank you for calling.
Thank you.
Great to hear from you today. Yeah, Mark in Calgary on the U.S. election. Hi, Mark.
Hey, Rob. Thanks for taking my call. How are you doing?
You're welcome. I'm great. Thank you, sir. Thanks for
calling. Good. I just like to say maybe this is a wake-up call with Trump getting a majority and the support behind him, that enough's enough of the squeaky wheel, the minority complaints, all the little stuff that people are doing. A lot of people are looking forward to the straight, what's important, not the small details. And it kind of goes with the same thing with the cell phone. What a great opportunity to talk to your kids and explain to them how it works, what bullying looks like, what abuse looks like, and how to report it and how to recognize it, instead of just always fearing that if someone's going to bully you or fearing that something's upsetting you, how to confront it and how to work with it, not run away and be worrisome about it.
Or have the government just do a blanket ban, as they're going to do in Australia? That's what they're going to do in Australia for young people.
If that's what they're going to do, then you have to work with it. But I still think it's an opportunity to talk to your kids. Why are they doing this? Explain to them and educate them more. Education and communication is way bigger than putting bans on anything. So having the kids understand why and how to report and recognize bullying and any kind of anger or hate, how to recognize it and report it so it doesn't happen. Like my son, he'll play Xbox, and if he swears on there, I think it's like he gets banned. And really? That's bullying. If it's just socializing, great. But if someone's out there to hurt, harm, or do something to someone, that should be red flagged and recognized for sure. Not everybody's using it for terrible things.
Right. Gotcha. Okay. Thank you, Mark, for having your say. Really appreciate it. We'll stop here. When we come back, more of your calls in hour number 2 of the Talkback. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
We're still talking about the U.S. presidential election and what Canada should be doing to get ready for Trump Part 2. Limits on where people can protest. Maybe we'll pick up on that tomorrow. Banning young people from social media, popular topic today. Zia in Calgary. Zia, hi there.
Hi.
Hi, Zia.
Hey, Rob. It was nice talking to you, first-time caller. Just wanted to talk about the actual source of the social media and the impact of it. Because if you look at it, the algorithms are designed for, to capture any viewer, right? And that goes along not only on social media, but any other apps that we download, whether it's like a banking app or, like a gaming app. So you can limit the social media access for the kids, but the algorithms are still, intended to divert the mind. And right now we don't have any safeguards to, basically enable a brighter future for the kids, right? For someone that are, I've seen kids, my family and friends, when a younger one, whatever app they're involved in, they're so fully invested in that app, whether it's a game or social media. And so to me, I feel like we need to have a discussion which looks at the source of this. And that's the intention of those algorithms, because someone in a company is sitting there paying, as I think Dana was talking about last caller, that they're building those algorithms with the intent that we need to capture more viewers, right? And without, realizing that anyone can get harmed. And I honestly think there's an opportunity here. If we were to better and refine our algorithms, those can be used to shape the mind for better future, right? So if a kid is going, for example, or anybody really, is going down a rabbit hole of something that is not socially acceptable, we can limit it and guide them towards what is better, right? So similar to the example that last caller was saying, that he needs to guide his kids. Instead, we can use our algorithms to build that, but companies don't want to pay for it. And then discussion comes down to that companies are benefiting cost, of course, more. They get more money if they can capture any viewer for a longer time.
Yeah, more users, more stickiness. They call it stickiness sometimes in IT, right? Yeah. More,
absolutely.
Get the eyeballs on there. Yeah, okay, that's very interesting. Thank you, Zia, for your call. Really appreciate it. Yeah, call back anytime. David, what do you think about this ban? I mean, you grew up in kind of the social media age. Like you've been social media has been part of your life since your childhood. Like,
well, yes and no.
Yes and no?
Because I'm on the very beginning of what we consider Gen Z. I went through what I would consider childhood without social media. I started using social media for the first time on a computer, not on a smartphone or a tablet, on a desktop computer. That was my introduction to social media, and it was on Facebook. That would have been circa 2007, 2008. But social media then, when it was limited to a desktop computer or a laptop where you had to be somewhere with Wi-Fi, is very, very different from the all-encompassing, never turning off 24/7 social media that we have now, where it's always in your pocket, on your phone, all hours of the day, regardless of where you are.
Yeah.
So I like the idea.
What do you think of this idea of what the Australian government is doing? If you're under 16, you just won't be able to get on it at all.
I like that idea. I do.
You do? Why?
Because I think that in hindsight, we will look back and realize that not doing something about social media for children was a huge mistake. If we don't bring in some kind of serious limitations on how people who have developing brains can access this technology. I really do. I think, and I've been saying it for years, I said this to you yesterday when we were talking about this off air, I think in 50 years from now, we'll look back at this time of totally unfettered, unregulated internet and social media use for young people, and it will be abhorrent in hindsight. We'll look back at it like we look back at smoking in the car with the windows up with your kids. I really do think
or
that.
a pregnant woman smoking or something like that. Like just, oh my gosh, that's so terrible. Why would you do that to your children? Yeah, really interesting take there, Dave. Okay, we'll pick it up after the news. I'm Rob Snow. It's Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Well, there's a lot to talk about. What should Canada be doing to get ready for a second term of U.S. President Donald Trump? What do you think about the idea of banning young people from using social media until they turn 16 years old? The Australians are going to try and do that. What do you think about limits on where people can protest, like outside places of worship, for example? To Jay in Calgary. Jay.
Rob, how's it going?
Oh, it goes. Jay, with or without me, it goes. You know. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we've got beautiful weather here today.
Oh, good for you. Send it this way.
Yeah. Well, we're waiting on snow. So I wanted to chat quickly.
Keep that there.
I'm a social work student at Mount Royal University in Calgary here. I'm 44 myself. I've got a 13-year-old and a 9-year-old. So in regards to the social media, I look at it as the same idea as pools. If you just take that analogy, there's always been pools, right? For a long, long time, we have pools. You can build a fence around it. You can put gates on it. You can put tarps over it. Kids are going to get in and swim, right? So when it comes to social media, the big thing between them is you have to educate kids on how to swim. You got to teach them. You got to take the time. You got to tell them about what's safe swimming, what's not safe swimming. You know, when your friends are jumping off a bridge, kind of deal into the water. Are you going to? Can you swim? Is that even a safe scenario for you? So looking at it in social media, we have to educate, I think, and intervene with the parents, right? I'm 44. my kids have grown up in this digital world. I didn't, right? I remember AOL, right? And I believe, like the gentleman earlier said, that we're going to look back at the social media and, unfettered access like we did with, like you said, smoking mothers, right? Or smoking in the car like I grew up with the windows shut. We're going to look at this probably in 10, 20 years and go, holy cow, that's not okay. But where we're sitting right now is, my 9-year-old figured out how to use the smart TV and get onto YouTube. And so I instantly had to delete that app and figure out, does she know how to add the app? Does she not? My 13-year-old, splits time between her dad and myself and has unreal access, right, to predators. We don't lock the door as often anymore because the predators come in through our Wi-Fi, not through the front door. It's rare now, right? So we have to look at educating, yes, the kids, but also the parents. Right? They're going to find a way to get in the pool. They're going to find a way to get online. Right? I mean, I understand banning phones in school.
Yeah, I don't know. Great. Yeah, look, I find that a really interesting take. Social media as a swimming pool, a backyard swimming pool. Okay. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I view that. I don't know if I view it as a swimming pool. I've said this before. I view social media as big tobacco. That's how I view it. It's undeniable that it's terrible for young people. It is linked to terrible mental health, body image, low self-esteem, depression, anxiety, suicide, bullying. It is addictive. It's all about this injection of dopamine, right, into the brains of people.
100% agree. Yeah.
Okay.
I think
someone shared my post. It's a social validation feedback loop. Okay. And if it's the big tobacco of our time, we ban young people from buying cigarettes. We ban young people from buying booze and pot and all kinds of other things are banned. Now, to your point, it's the swimming pool point. That doesn't mean people won't smoke, drink, or do drugs when they're 15, because I did all those things when I was 15. So I want to know if you can even effectively ban people from using social media. And I think what you're saying is no, and that's why we have to teach them how to use it safely.
Correct. Absolutely. It would be really interesting to see what Australia's take is a year from now, 2 years, 3, 5 years, and how that, in a sense, that theory and that project went for them, and to see the results of that. From an unbiased approach, I think that would be very, very eye-opening for society. Mm-hmm. And I would like to see how that goes. For my own kids, they don't get, when they're with me, they don't get access to the internet without anything, right? So I think if we're going to do that, we have to be able to then maybe every 15 to 30 minutes has to have a parent check in and put in a password, something like that, so that, legalities are covered, that a parent is then there, or the parents or the guardians get not a spreadsheet, but a list of things the kids viewed or clicked on or commented, or comments that were made to them. Being able to monitor as a parent that way, I don't know. That's right. Way above my pay scale, but
okay, all right. Look, interesting. Thank you for your call. I really appreciate it. Yeah, great to hear from you. Let's go to Jacob in Orillia today. Hi, Jacob. Hi, Jacob.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hear you just fine, Jacob. Go ahead.
Yeah. So about the U.S. election, I'm very happy that Trump got elected. I think Kamala would have been a disaster. And I hope Canadians will stop thinking of Trump as the new Hitler and maybe start reconsidering that he has some policies and ideas that make a lot of sense. I am 28 years old, and the kind of Canada I grew up in is a country where factories are closing down everywhere. Pretty much 90% of what I buy has to come from somewhere overseas. I think we need to smarten up as a country and get our government back to working for the people instead of selling us out. We are being taxed far too much. And I think Trump has a lot of good ideas that would benefit Canadians as well. So my hope is that, I heard one caller talking about boycotting the states. Well, I guess I'd hope that some people would take some time to actually look and reconsider why more than half the U.S. population voted for him. And The other matter with the social media in Australia, I think that's an interesting idea. I like what the previous caller said about letting Australia give it a go and see what the results are. But I would be more interested in seeing a crackdown on pornography when it comes to children. I know several states have implemented rules where you want to go on a porn site, you need to put in government data that verifies your age. And I think if we look at what is having more of an impact on the children, I would say pornography would be the number one thing. And we've just let it go as a thing where it's on the internet, and for some reason it's okay if kids go there and they get addicted to it at a very young age. So that would be where I would focus more instead, though.
Okay, fair point. Thank you for your call in Aurelia today. Good to hear from you today. I'm Rob Snow. It's Talk Back. Lots of time to take your call. Join the conversation. We'll be right back. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talk Back on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
So, David, just before we get back to the phone calls, almost every day I get an email. Where can I get your podcast, Mrs. Show? What's going on with the podcast? Look, if you're ever looking for a podcast of this show, Now You Know with Rob Snow, we have a great new mobile app. It's going to help you hear our show. When you want to, you can listen live. You can listen to the podcast. It's called the Seeker app. That's Seeker. It's spelled Seekr. And it's pretty slick. It's a pretty good app. You can personalize it to all your tastes. And there's all kinds of exclusive audio. You won't hear it anywhere else. News, music, sports. It's all there. You can download Seeker on iOS or Android. Seeker, spelled Seekr. And I can tell you now You Know with Rob Snow is now also available on Apple Podcasts and Spotify as well. So that's good for us, Dave. That's good. Good news there.
Great news for us. We have
Joe Rogan, look out, right, Dave?
We've cracked into the 2010s of podcasting technology around here. That's great.
Let's go to Terry. David said that, not me, boss. Terry. Hi, Terry.
Hello.
Hi, Terry. You're on the air. Go ahead, Terry.
Oh, hi. Yes, I just meant to say that, I grew up in an age where, again, we had, no social media, and then it just came. I was a little bit older. When I was 15, I got my first flip phone. And overall, I can see that social media, it has an impact on us adults, and I can't imagine on children's. When I was in high school, if you get bullied by a group, you could always turn around and go see another group, and it wouldn't be like a gunpowder trail following you all over the place. Now kids, they get bullied at school. It follows them on social media. They go back home. It's on there as well. It just follows them across the board. And then, I think overall there is, other callers have been saying, we're going to be looking back and be thinking that it has been unleashed loose at first, and then it makes sense afterwards to kind of put regulations, now that we've seen the impact that it has on children and adults. It kind of makes sense to kind of try to find a way to limit the damage it can do to younger minds. Then, I think overall it's a cell phone usage in overall, because there's social media, there's really, very weird websites out there, there's pornography. I think if parents are really if there's a legit concern about safety for kids to be able to reach the parents. I remember there was some type of cell phones back in the days that was created more for children. You had only a few phone numbers that were entered in there that you could communicate with, no cameras, no text and whatnot. Just if it's the safety sakes, then let's bring those up. And then if not, then let's get the kids to go out and socialize and learn to socialize together instead of hiding behind screens. And it would be just overall better. We keep seeing studies that are bringing up these facts that it's not good for young minds, right? The scrolling and being fed all of this, right?
Yeah. So good points all around, Terry. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Joe in Kitchener today. Hi, Joe.
Hi, Rob. When Trump won, our main focus was, okay, well, what positives can we take away from this? So my biggest concern is the tariffs, because that may affect me directly. Our business is 100% with U.S. contractors. But when you want, from a practicality standpoint, if you go and mess with the automotive supply chain, that is such a convoluted and complex system of just-in-time parts and pricing. So when you go and mess with that, not only do you mess up us, you mess up billions of dollars worth of corporate entities that probably funded a lot of Trump's campaign. So I'm not necessarily concerned, but, you just never know with this guy. He's kind of a loose cannon. But it's a very complex system to go and mess with that and just slap a 10% tariff across the board. Now, I understand the milk quota system, the milk management, the dairy management system. Yeah, I know dairy farmers that would tell you right to your face that needs to go because they want to compete on an even keel with the U.S. as well and not have to worry about quotas and subsidies and all that. Aluminum, yeah, that's a different animal altogether. That's sort of a unfair advantage up in Quebec. As far as the social media crap goes, I think it's the bane of human existence. Okay, I think it's. I've never subscribed to social media, and when it first came out, I'm like, "Oh, are you going to join this joke?" No, man, I'm not a lemming, and I never will be. Okay.
All right.
So, so that's sort of my take, and I think that it's dangerous to kids, and I think kids need to be somewhat absconded from social media and not allowed to participate until you get to a certain age of reality. All right, thanks, Rob.
Thanks, Joe. Good to hear from you again in Kitchener today. We'll stop here and we'll go back out to Alberta, take another call from Alberta, and then we'll probably wrap things up for today. It's the Talkback Hour on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Not a lot of time left, so let's get right back to the phones on our topics of the day. Casey in Alberta. Casey, what's on your mind today, Casey?
It was about the protesting in places of worship, in front of places of worship.
Yeah.
I think something needs to be done about that. Like, I'm all for freedom of speech and protest.
Yeah.
I think what we've been seeing lately definitely crosses the line.
But if it crosses the line, because when it crosses the line, then you're talking about criminal activity, right?
Well, I mean, when you're going into people's neighborhoods and protesting in front of people's homes for things that they have no control over, I mean, that's pretty unprecedented in this country.
Yeah, we have laws against that too.
Yeah, when you have mobs showing up at temples in Brampton, and violence, it's just something needs to be done. I think.
I would just say, enforce the law. We have laws against all of this activity now. Do we really need new laws?
I understand the constraints that police officers are under. They're overworked. They're and all that. But I think we need to. I mean, I don't see this problem going away anytime soon. So I think it's something that we need to focus on.
You know what? I agree with you. I think where I'm departing from people on this issue is the idea that we need a new law. And I would be very wary because we're talking about a fundamental right here.
That's absolutely right.
Okay. Right. The freedom of peaceful assembly. You are protected from your government by that in the charter.
That's right.
But it's peaceful.
But I think it starts to become unpeaceful when you're in, people's neighborhoods or you're blocking traffic and people can't get to the hospital, stuff like that.
Laws on the books for all of that. There's laws on the books for all that, Casey. I thank you for your call. I thank you for your call. Freedom of peaceful assembly is one of the charter rights that separates Canada from the darkness of tyranny. If you don't like your government, you can grab a sign and join a protest and join a march and sing your songs and bang your drums and grab your megaphones. And you won't get shot in the street like they do in Iran. But if you start beating up other people, or if you start calling for the elimination of other people because of their religion, you're not protesting anymore, and you're committing criminal acts. And the police should put you in handcuffs and put you in the back of a police car and throw you in jail. And you should face charges and hire a lawyer and have to defend yourself in court. We have laws about this. We have intimidation laws on the books already. It's been part of the criminal code for decades. You can't harass and intimidate people. You can't follow people around. You can't threaten other people with violence. You can't stake out other people's homes. This is all part of the criminal code already. Maybe the police need more training on what is lawful and unlawful. I don't know. But you should be cautious, everybody. When governments of any stripe and at any level start saying, well, we need new laws because we need to restrict people's ability to protect themselves. I don't like what I'm seeing out there, but we have laws on the books to deal with that. Be very wary when you hear politicians talk like this. Be very, very, very wary of this. I'm Rob Snow. Back tomorrow, Friday, free for all. Talkback hour tomorrow. That's always an adventure in talk radio. Latest breaking news coming up next. It's News Radio.